misinformation and fake news. The start will be given by Dr. Alejandro. The people who join us through Zoom, we kindly ask you to write your questions down in the chat so that the speaker can answer them in the corresponding section of the talk. We kindly ask you to put your mobile devices on silent for the duration of the conference. Thank you very much and welcome.
Now we're ready, Michael. Please start.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name is AlejandroTapia. I'm a medical doctor here in Mexico, and I'm going to be talking to you about this topic, which I find that is really interesting. This is scientific dissemination in times of misinformation and fake news. Why is this relevant? We really, I think most of us remember what happened with COVID-19, and that was a sort of really important event where we found out how illiterate we are in terms of scientific knowledge. So I'm going to be talking to you about making science in times of these hard events, and also what you can do if you are interested in starting some sort of scientific dissemination in social media or in other aspects. So I have a bachelor's in medicine from Anahuac University. I also have a I'm studying a master's degree in clinical nutrition at the National Institute of Public Health, what we call Instituto Nacional de Salud Pública. I'm also a part of the group that is making research about the warning labels in Mexico, these hexagons that we find in ultra-processed foods that tells us if something is high in sugar or saturated fats. So this is me, and this is my cat. He's called Dali, and I'm going to start. So we're going to be talking about, this is like the sort of the schedule that we have in this talk. We're going to be talking about the infodemic. We're also going to be talking about science in time of COVID, what we learned and what we didn't learn from this experience. Also, is science infallible? We're going to be talking about fats and carbohydrates. This little part I titled Chismecito, little gossip. And also, at the end, I'm going to be talking about scientific dissemination 101, if you're interested in making something of this, like a little career, I was going to say. So why is it important, misinformation? Are social networks weapons of mass destruction? Because as we experienced in the past, social media can be used for really interesting things, but also it can be used to literally destroying people's minds, and that also affects us as a society. So as you can see, this was an article published in 2022, and the conclusion of the impact of misinformation was that individuals who were highly engaged in social media platforms and believed in conspiracy theories were less likely to wear masks, even with health officials recommending it. That is something sort of obvious, I'd say. And also, with increased false claims on vaccination safety and social media, vaccine hesitancy also increased. So that was the real problem. Beliefs in people's minds can be correct, can be wrong. That is not something that we would theorize about. But the problem is when this misinformation takes action and people stopped wearing masks, stopped having this sort of public distance, and also didn't want to be vaccinated because they thought that it was a sort of medium or way from the government to take control of the society and those sort of things. So, for example, 48% of US population who participated in the study on stigma on Twitter believe that the pharmaceutical industry created the virus, and 28.3% believe that the Chinese government created the virus as a bioweapon. Also, as some of you might remember, the real answer to COVID were not antivirals or other medical treatments. The real answer was vaccination. There was a whole lot of theoretical ways to achieve this type of immunity, but the real problem was not the incredible scientific endeavor of achieving a working vaccine, was to get people vaccinated. At the end, it was more of mRNA vaccines, but we had a lot of ways to achieve this. The real problem was not to make this really hard thing, which is to develop a working vaccine, but the real problem was to make people get vaccinated. And what is that? What is this infodemic consist of? So most of the trending topic of fake news were about prevention. I don't know if you remember, but people were taking Lysol through this through the mouth, or I mean, as in an ingested drug. Also about the treatment, we had some sort of misinformation about ivermectin, also about azithromycin and other types of antibiotics, and not also, I don't know, CDS, these sort of chloride compounds that were supposed to help people cure COVID-19. Also about medication, about government, we have already seen these types of misinformation. About science, that scientists were taking advantage of the population and were making experiments with the population. Also about vaccines, as you can see, there were a really big number of vaccines, of fake news in terms of vaccination. Also about the virus, remedies and cures, and also about the mask use, which some of you might remember that most of the people were not really happy to use them in public. Also, how does this misinformation spreads? We really know about algorithms, but I would like to ask you, does anyone know how they really work? Because we have these so-called black box algorithms where you provide an input and you get an output, but you really don't know how this algorithm works. This happens a lot with social media platforms such as YouTube, such as Facebook, such as Twitter. But we also have the so-called white box or glass box algorithms where we really do understand the input. So we're leaving this to AI to decide what is going to be, what people are going to be consuming. And this can also be very detrimental for minds in development, such as adolescents and kids. So social media makes money with our attention. They monetize our attention, sending us to through these rabbit holes of misinformation. For example, if you were to start watching videos about conspiracies, the algo is going to be feeding you, I mean your mind, with videos of even more and more ridiculous and intricate conspiracies. Why? Because you are there. And also, it has been shown that, for example, Facebook starts to isolate you from other people according to your beliefs. So in your feed, if you are, I don't know, here in Mexico, if you are a member or a participant of Morena, you're going to be only shown videos of Morena, or you're going to believe that your belief is the belief of society. And this creates also fractures among people, among families that have distant beliefs. So algorithms can be used to create really interesting things, but it was also found that these sort of algorithms erode the very fabric of society. So how many people use social networks? We have Facebook, for example, 3 billion. We have YouTube, 2.3 billion, WhatsApp, 2 billion, Instagram, 1.4 billion, and Twitter for 400 million. Also, TikTok is not here, but it also has a very big number of users, mostly of Gen Z users. So it is important to talk about this because, for example, WhatsApp, through this sort of chains or pieces of information that people shared with their contacts, that was one of the main ways, at least here in Latin America and more in Mexico, that misinformation was spread. So how much impact was there? For example, a content analysis study evaluated 1,225 fake news stories, found that social media platforms were responsible for disseminating 50%. At least 50% of the misinformation that was identifiable about COVID was spread to social media. The other half, maybe, I don't know, in direct contact, person-to-person contact. So we're in this endeavor of making good information, good scientific information, and also to combat or to fight against this disinformation. We have this sort of about the Squid Game that we are people pulling from one side, but the disinformation side is winning. I'm afraid to tell you that they're winning, and misinformation is being spread way more than scientific information. So what about doing science in times of adversity? Because we all wanted to know what to do against COVID. We wanted to know what were the strategies, if we could implement a treatment. So this happened with ivermectin. As you can see, here are a whole lot of articles about ivermectin as an effective treatment to SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19. This is a pilot clinical trial in Lebanon. The conclusion was that ivermectin appears to be efficacious in providing clinical benefits in a randomized treatment of asymptomatic SARS-CoV-2 infection. We have this also, but what happened? That article was retracted. And the retraction notice was basically saying that the results were not real. But what happened? That article was a social media darling, as this article expresses, receiving more than 45,000 tweets and pickups in 90 news outlets, according to this Altmetrics. So this was the number 7 among all papers published at that time. Of course, that was not, I think, made with a bad intent, but also sorry, my dog was barking, and I don't know if you can hear that. This happens a lot in science, and science is really interesting because one thing that goes with science and doesn't happen with dogmatic views is that science adopts to evidence. And this happened with the ivermectin use, that in the end, we found out that it was not really beneficial for people to use ivermectin, but a very big number of people were exposed to the adverse effects of ivermectin with people with the aim of helping them, but at the end, there was a misuse of ivermectin. Also, not everything that is published in a journal is gold. Not everything that is published in a journal is science. We have this article. This was a published article in 2020. It was retracted, as you can see here. What does this say? It says 5G technology and induction of coronavirus in skin cells. What do you think of this? This was an article published by all of these researchers. It was obviously retracted after, but in this research, this is sort of the abstract of this article. We show that 5G millimeter waves could be absorbed by dermatologic cells acting like antennas. This is not satiric. This is not a joke. This was really published. Transfer to other cells and play the main role in producing coronaviruses in biological cells. So what was the theory here was that the vaccines were a media or a medium to infect people with more coronaviruses. This was obviously retracted again. but this was published. And this journal was also spreaded by a big number of media outlets. It was on the news, it was on CNN, it was on Fox News. So it was really relevant. And we thought, well, this is science. This is a scientific journal. If you read what does this journal publishes, you will find that this was a predatory journal. And this is relevant if you want to make an academic career in science. You have to know that there are journals, I mean this between little commas, because the aim of these journals is not to publish science and to advance science. It is only to make people pay in order to get this sort of articles published. And when you start making and you, I don't know, publish your first article, you are going to be receiving nonstop emails from these sort of journals asking you to publish whatever you have in your drawer only in order to pay more money for them. So this is maybe for another talk. What about vitamin D? Vitamin D was also told to reduce the risk of adverse clinical outcomes in patients with COVID infection. And the results, here you can see that among study patients, 74% had severe COVID infection and 32.8 were vitamin sufficient. That means that at least 68% or 67 were not vitamin D sufficient. So this was told to prevent and to help people with the COVID infection to avoid a severe infection. So after this article was published, there were concerns raised about the validity of the results and the conclusions reported in the article. So in the end, what did we found? That vitamin D was not really an important factor, at least to be impacted by supplementation. So we have a big problem here because we as scientists or as people that work with scientific research, we have to interpret the information and to think that this is serious medical information or scientific information. But in times of what I call adverse times, we at least have to have this precautionary principle. That is, first, do no harm. The second, skepticism. We have to be skeptic about the results. Also, reasonable doubt. A very important topic is that the path from basic science to clinical science is long and winding. And some interventions that we find in the past to be effective on a basic level are not effective on clinical level or on human level. So also there's a big difference between fast track published articles and to literally skip peer reviewing. And also that this is a say that we have in Spanish, that the pavement, the way through hell is paved of good intentions. Also, it doesn't mean that the people that published this information were even aiming to produce harm to the population. However, they did produce harm. And also, what about the little gossip? Because as I said before, science is not perfect. So I'm going to be giving you a story about nutrition, which is what I'm currently making research about and what I'm studying. And also, if I were to ask you, what is the cause from a nutritional perspective of atherosclerosis, this little thing here, some of you might say that it is the excess of fat intake, also ultra-processed foods intake, or also sugar. However, the answer in 1980 was that the problem was fat. These are the medical guidelines of 1980s, of the 80s in USA. And as you can see, they're very reasonable and they are very similar to what we have in the current guidelines that are from 2020 to 2025. So eat a variety of foods, that is perfectly reasonable, maintain an ideal weight, avoid too much fat, too much saturated fat, and also cholesterol. Eat foods with adequate starch and fiber. Avoid too much sugar, avoid too much sodium, and also if you drink alcohol, do it in moderation. This is This is very, I'd say, reasonable counseling for most of the patients. But what happened? In the 50s, just 12% of Americans were obese, 50% in 1980, and also 35% by the year 2000. In the UK, the line was flat for decades. That means that it was not a very big an increase of the prevalence of obesity, at which point it also turns toward the sky about this year, the 80s. What happened? Here we have an hypothesis and fact. This is a very vintage article in New York, in the Lancet, journal by John Jotkin. What did he find out? This was the first hypothesis. This was published in 1957. So he said that basically the problem with atherosclerosis was an excess of energy, and that the main cause of excess of energy intake in the US population was sugar. There was another sort of camp or tribe that said that the problem was fat. This was led by Ansel Keys, and this was a matter of public interest because the President Eisenhower had a heart attack. So he said, we need information, we need to find what can we do to prevent more, to reduce this cardiovascular risk. And there was, just as I've said before, two people with two different theories. As you can see here, this is Ansel Keys. This is the other scientist that was involved in this chismecito. So he found out that when you eat more fat, you have more risk of dying from clinical and cardiovascular disease. As you can see here, there is a correlation, and I think that everyone can see that when you eat more fat, you are going to get a bigger risk of dying of cardiovascular disease. What was the problem? That you can cherry pick and you can sort of take the data and lie with the information that you find. Jotkin published a book that was Pure, White, and Deadly. As you can imagine, this is talking about sugar. He noted, as you can see, that while humans have been carnivorous and carbohydrates only became a major component of their diet 10,000 years ago, with the advent of mass agriculture, sugar, a pure carbohydrate with all fiber and nutrition stripped out, has been a part of Western diets for just 300 years. In the evolutionary terms, this is just a second. So it was more probable that sugar intake was the cause of this cardiovascular risk increase among population more than fat, because we have been eating fat and also saturated fat for more years. That was a simple theory. So Ansel Keys published this study. This is called the study of the 7 countries. But what was the problem? Here you can see the correlation, and you can see that, for example, Japan doesn't eat a lot of fat and doesn't have a very high risk of heart deaths. More fat in Italy, more fat in Australia, Canada, England, and the US. That was the problem. But if we analyze all the data that was that this study got, we see that the relationship, the correlation is not that clear. So the original data set comprised of 22 countries, not 7. If you take out 15 countries here, you find this correlation. If you take the whole data, the correlation is not clear. So maybe the problem was not fat, it was more about ultra-processed food. What do we know today? We know that saturated fat does not increase heart disease risk. You can see that everything that is green here reduces the risk. For example, unsaturated oils, also whole grains, that carbohydrates and saturated fat don't increase the risk, and also that trans fat and refined sugar and starch increases the heart risk. So it was not only sugar, it was not only carbohydrates, it was also not only fat, only a very clear type of fat that can be found mainly in ultra-processed foods, and also it was not carbohydrates. It was clearly refined sugar and starch that you can also find in ultra-processed foods. The current guidelines, they don't advise to restrict saturated fat intake to reduce cardiovascular disease. So this is a survey made in Mexico. This is called EMPECIT. This was made in the year 2011. And the results of this survey are very enlightening and give us the reason why we need to be making this scientific dissemination. So how much does the Mexican know about science? 49% of the respondents strongly agreed that because of their knowledge, scientific researchers have a power that makes them dangerous. 72% trust too much in faith and too little or little in science. 72% know acupuncture, homeopathy, and cleansing, that is sort of like enemas, as means to treat some diseases. 33% believe in lucky numbers. 40% affirm that some people have psychic powers. 63% believe that the sex of the baby is defined by the father. 24% consider that electrons are smaller than atoms. This is a very little percentage. 27% consider that human beings did not originate from the evolution of other species. 37.5% believe that humans lived at the same time as dinosaurs, and also 16% point out that the Earth goes around the sun in a month. So this is the real reason we lack scientific literacy among the main population. Maybe we understand that some of these beliefs are ridiculous or are not based in reality, but the society thinks this. Most of the people thinks this. So I also want to share to you two types of content that talk about the same topic. First, we have an umbrella review. This is a very potent way to find information. This is a type of meta-analysis. And as you can see, it covered 59 studies, which included 77 meta-analyses and 66 health outcomes. And the main message that we can take from this review or this systematic review is that fruit consumption is good for people. It reduces the risk of dying of cancer, of dying of diabetes type 2 related complications, cardiovascular disease. So this very sophisticated piece of scientific knowledge was cited by 3 articles, and it also was seen, the last time I checked, by 100 people. On the other side, we have this guy. This guy is called Dr. Biter. He's a sort of clown from nutritional tribe called ketogenic tribe. And I don't know if you can hear this. I really hope that you can, because this is the same topic, but a really contrastful message. I'm going to just hit play here.
Doctor Biter, ¿usted por qué dice que la fruta es mierda si las frutas son súper saludables? Este estudio salió hace 3 meses. Y el estudio compara, ojo con esto, unas ratitas a las cuales se les dio mucha grasa con otras que se les dio especialmente fructosa. Y encontraron que las que le dieron grasa estaban perfectas y las que le dieron fructosa se volvieron mierda. Con hígado graso, ojo con esto, se aumentaron los triglicéridos y se aumentó también los transportadores del colesterol. Y este estudio lo que nos dice, señores, nos han metido este cuentico de que la fruta es saludable. No es así. La fruta, aunque ustedes no lo crean, es 80% agua y 19% azúcar. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Que si le quito el agua, el 90% del azúcar de la fruta es azúcar. Y a ti te gusta, es porque sabe a dulce. Pero es un dulce que te va a matar, que te va a envenenar. Porque principalmente la fruta, banano, uva, pera, naranja, piña, caña de azúcar y maíz, tienen fructosa. Y no hay fructosa buena y fructosa mala, como te quieren hacer saber. Eso es pura mierda. La fructosa es fructosa.
So I think that you can see the main message of this video. This video, how much views it received? About 3 million views. So this piece of scientific evidence and really sophisticated scientific evidence received the attention of about 100 people, mainly scientists that understand this. And this message or this video was seen by about 3 million people. What's the problem here? Obviously, he cited a basic science study with rats. You know that rats are different from people. Also, fructose is not the only component of fruit. Fructose is just a part of fruit. What is the other problem when you try to extrapolate what he said and what the article said? That these rats received pure fructose. How we say this? High fructose corn syrup. That is not what fruit, the type of fructose that fruit has. It is different. So you can say that because some people drink fructose will have the same effect that people that eat apples or eat pears. So what's the problem here? We need to be fighting against this type of information, which is very salient. As you can see, this guy takes people's attention in a second. This is a very sort of boring type of research. So most people would look at this and think this is something that I don't understand. So I'm going to listen to this guy. This is the reason that why, because we need to be making scientific dissemination. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my trip as a scientific, what can I say, disseminator, what we call divulgador científico in Spanish. So this was the first time that I started to make content in social media. This is just a joke. This is a sort of girl that published that when she has nothing to do, and so I asked if she was in mitosis. So it is sort of a stupid joke, but it was really popular among that time. So scientific dissemination not only made me popular, if you want to take that word, I don't like it, in social media, but it made me go to Canada to present a poster about cognitive enhancement in Montreal. So this was a conference for young researchers, young people such as you that are hearing me. And I want to say to you that science is a very interesting, a very noble endeavor that we need to be taking part in. So it all started as a meme page, as you might have seen. These were memes that maybe not that funny to you because this was about 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So this was a page, Facebook page called Memes Científicos. As you can see, we have these sort of jokes about Tesla and about Edison. We also have these jokes about quantum physics and also quantum physics and sanation or curing diseases. So this was obviously pseudoscience. And these were some of the memes that were very popular. And a meme, if you think about it, it was an idea that was published by Richard Dawkins in his book, The Selfish Gene. And it was a way of him to say that culture is transmitted to people between mouth, and ideas are another way of passing information. One way is the genes and another way are the memes. So that is the book where the term meme originated. And also, this was just a way to make people understand some basic topics of science. This was, for example, about hydrophobic things and hydrophilics. So it all started with me. I was on my social service, what we call servicio social in medicine, where you are in a clinic, most of the time in a town very far away from your city. I was lucky in the sense that I could make my social service here in Mexico City. So I started this channel. At first, it was with this Wacom tablet that I have here. It was the same one that I used to record these videos. As you can see, it was about the metabolism of calcium, calcitonin, how to take techniques of studying medicine, how to take notes, also some methods of mnemonics methods to learn information. I also have made things in Instagram. At first, it started as a page about radiology, and in the end, it was about something else. No, it was a combination from clinical science and also, as you can see here, memes and mnemonics and different types of ways for people to find something interesting in science, and mostly because I'm a doctor in medicine. Also, as you can see, I changed my name 3 times. At first, it was Medicina Fácil. Then it was Doctor Sin Doctorado. That's a sort of internal joke or private joke that we have in medicine, because most of the people say that you can be a doctor because we are bachelors in the end. So that was the reason of why I chose this name of Doctor Sin Doctorado. But as you can see, there are different ways in which you can promote science. You can make videos, you can make memes, you can make posts. Now you can make TikToks, and it's really easy. It was not that easy in my times. So as you can see, then I've changed my name to Dr. Michael Tapia, because in the end, I wanted to reach a bigger audience. So I've started to make videos about different topics that are relevant for most of the people. Here I talk about fatty liver disease, also about COVID. As you can see, 1.3 million views. That is a lot of people that learn what we knew in that moment about anosmia, hyposmia, fatigue, dyspnea, and other topics. No, here we talk about hemorrhoids, vitamin D deficiency, which has 8 million views. That is a whole lot of people. Epigenetics, also very technical topics that are relevant to people's lives and that we can learn something. And also about this sort of miracle products or miracle cures that we have here, not only in Mexico, we find this in, I'd say, most of the countries. Also, beyond social media, I have started to participate in the traditional media, that is TV, radio, and those sort of topics. And this was an idea that I've started when I was in my social service, as I've said. It was a hobby. It was not that I thought I would get money out of it, or I didn't believe at that moment that 7 years later or 8 years later, I would going to be publishing videos still. So this is the impact of an idea. I would really hope that you have ideas and you pursue them to the end, because you can get very incredible results and you don't know where it is going to take you. So this is the last, this was, well, how can I say that? This is the most recent information of my channel. As you can see, it has more than 100 million views. It has a watch time of 12 million hours, just short of 850,000 subscribers. But how many is this million hours in terms of years? So people have listened to my voice, to my melodious voice and my ideas for about 1,370 years. That's very big impact that we can have on people's lives. Obviously, if we not only just produce videos, but scientific-based videos. So what do you want to do when you graduate? Do you want to make research? Do you want to divulge, to make this scientific dissemination? Do you want to have clinical activity? Maybe you want to work in the private sector, which I think is a very intelligent idea for you. Do you want to teach? So these are ways to promote science among population. Not only social media, you can also make research, which is, I'd say, way more difficult and way more challenging than social media. Also, you can divulge in your groups among your patients if you are studying clinical related sciences, or among other groups of people if you're in the more engineering sector. And also you can teach. Teaching is something that is not very well paid, at least in Mexico. I don't know in other countries. So it's something that we mostly make out of passion, because I disseminate information. I make this scientific divulgation because I love to teach. That was the main driver of me publishing video after video, and only because I liked it. So teaching is a very noble endeavor, but you have to learn right now that it is not a very well paid endeavor. So we need teachers, but we don't pay them enough. Also, I would like to you, I don't know if you're still there, but a quick exercise. Maybe you can take a little a sheet and just take notes. So if you're interested in science, which research topic are you interested in? On what topic do you think there is a lack of dissemination? I'd say in most of them. What clinical activity do you want to dedicate yourself to? Or maybe if you want to be a teacher, what subject would you like to teach? So I just want to give you these ideas. I hope that these memes, because as we have learned, ideas are memes, that these memes made sense to you, and also that if you're passionate about a topic, you need to be pursuing it to the end. So thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions. If you have a question for me, you can send me a message to Dr. Michael Tapia on Instagram, and I kindly and very gladly answer to you. These are my cats. I always put them on my presentations. This one is Dali, this one is Hendrix, this is Kiara, that is right here. This is Matilda, and this is Julio Verne. It was the dog that was barking before. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So do you have time to answer possible questions from you in the audience?
Yeah, sure.
Does anyone have a question for Dr. Mihail?
I have a question, if that's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So my question for you is, what type of advice would you give young students, young researchers that are starting their career to try to avoid falling for predatory journals? Because I know that there's a bills list, but honestly, it's impossible to update just with the constant generation of not only predatory journals, but now predatory conferences as well. So what would be your advice on this front, on how to identify them, how to avoid falling prey to those?
I'd say that most of the time when something looks too easy or too good, that's a good way to just know that if they are inviting you, you have just published one article in, I don't know, as an author in a topic, and they are inviting you to a conference in Copenhagen or in Germany, maybe that's a predatory congress. Also, you can, I would really like to think that we can ask to researchers, I mean more aged researchers, more experienced researchers about this, because it is very tempting to just get everything published and say, I have 20 published articles, but I have to pay. I don't know, because I have never paid to publish. Some people say that we as researchers should be getting paid to publish. Most of the people don't know that we not only don't get paid, that most of the time to publish in journals such as Nature or Lancet, you need to pay money. And also, if you want to have an open, a free article for people to read, you need to pay more. So some of the money that we get from scholarships or from scholarships or support from another people gets into paying to publish. So if it looks too good, most of the time it is a fraud. And also I'd say that, as you've said before, there is a list that you can search on the web about predatory journals. For example, one predatory journal that was recently talked about as is was the Nutrients journal. It is a very, it has theoretically a very high impact factor, but it was also said that you need to pay, so it was categorized as a predatory journal. And most of the time when I want to publish something, I think I want to publish here, here, and here. I'm going to decide where it is going to be published. Obviously, it doesn't go that way most of the time. You need to make some changes. It is a very long process to publish an article most of the time, but most of the time, you know which are the reputed sources from, I don't know, virology, microbiology, and nanotechnology. And some of these journals that only have like 20 articles and that only publish, or journals that publish too many articles, most of the time are in this category of predatory journals.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Dr. Miller.
And there is a person.
Oh, in the.
Oh, there's also, yeah, Dr. Flores, but we can go first and then, or do you do have a question,
This
right?
is more like a comment, not actually a question. Well, I think it's important to for everyone in here that if we want to make the dissemination of science, or science dissemination, we need knowledge. You know, like sometimes we watch a video or as Mikhail is doing in social media, creating videos or memes or posts, but this requires knowledge, right? So it's not like we only create this just because it's an idea, and it's not easy. That's my point. That sometimes we can watch a video or a reel that it's about 20 seconds, but the time for creating these 20 seconds with real science is not 20 seconds, right? It's like, it's a lot of knowledge behind it. It's a master, or it's a PhD, or it's being a doctor without PhD. But it requires years of knowledge and practicing. It's not like just in 15 or 10 minutes you are going to provide science without knowledge. It requires a lot of working time. So don't get this idea that being scientific persons, it's gonna be easy just because you watch a reel that is with seconds showing you a tool. So it's not always in that way. Right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not easy. It looks easy, but you need to be concise. You need to change the language that you're using in order for people to understand you. So it's not easy, but I also say that it's not that hard if you really find it interesting. If it's something that you're passionate about, you're going to learn a way to do it. Also, as I've said before, it started as a hobby. I was not with the idea of getting money or getting anything out of it, just enjoyment of teaching people something. So I believe that is a way to look at it, because algorithms are also harmful for creators. I don't know if you know this, but there's also a syndrome called creator burnout. You can get burnt out of creating content because the algorithms are some capricious things that we don't understand, and we think that this is going to work and this is not working, and it also impacts your mental health. So I'd say you can start right now, but also it has to be well researched where you're going to be talking about, and don't get discouraged if you at the beginning don't get many views or many comments, because that's the way as we have all started, that we are in this world of scientific dissemination. We started like that. Obviously, it could be really great if we could get a TV show like Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan is one of my heroes. He's one of the biggest scientific disseminators of history, at least modern history. So I think that would be utopic and very ideal, but you have to learn that some things are harder than they look.
Thank you.
Very well. Dr. Flores, I see you're in Zoom. I don't know if you can hear us, but we're ready for your question.
So thank you very much, Dr. Tapia, for the talk. I enjoyed a lot your talk. Regarding your particular example about dissemination associated to coronary disease and nutritional habits, maybe. Have you identified some strategies to address this change of habit that sometimes is complicated in a long time? So sometimes it's easy to change our habits of diet in a short time, but it's not sustainable in a long period. So it's completely normal to recover a little and after that going back again. So have you identified effective strategies to address this change of habit situation?
Yes, we have a view. This is called lifestyle medicine. So that's a way to look at medicine as more as a preventive endeavor and not only as an intervention, but because in the end, what we want to do is to prevent diseases. So we have to make changes that are sustainable. In nutrition, we talk about these sort of SMART goals that have to be specific, measurable, and they have to have some characteristics in order to be sustainable in the long term. So most of the time, I have it easy with my patients in my private consult because they have already seen my videos and they are already convinced of the changes that they have to make in order to get the diabetes controlled. But also what happens in the real world is that people maybe don't want to go to the nutritional professional or the medical professional, and they are just there and they don't want to change anything. So sometimes we have to start with very little changes. One change that I mostly make with people is if you drink Coke, normal Coke, you need to drink non-sweetened, non-sugar sweetened Coke. Obviously, we know that non-artificial sweeteners and artificial sweeteners have been linked to some cancer risk and other things. But what we also know is that it is way better not to drink too many sugar and maybe to drink stevia or another thing. So this way to make goals for a patient is called SMART goals, and we start with very little changes. Sometimes I don't make a personalized diet in the first visit. So what psychologists say is that you have to learn what we call transtheory theory of change and find where the patient is. If the patient is in a phase of contemplation, we don't need to do changes right now, and any intervention is not going to work. If the patient is in a stage of making changes, that is the way. So in the first consultation, we mostly have to give information, and then when the patient has taken the important topics of this information, we start to make changes. So what I make in my consultations, mostly the first consult is not about giving a dietary plan or something like that. We talk about which changes the patients want to make and also how can I help them in order to achieve those goals. But also, I always tell them, these have to be realistic goals. If you want to start tomorrow to eat more vegetables and also stop drinking soda and stop eating ultra-processed foods, that is not going to work. So we are going to start one step at a time.
Any other questions? Very good. Okay, well, we thank you again for the talk. Very interesting in a number of ways. So final round of applause for Dr. Tapia. And we'll start setting up for the next one.
No necesito.
Okay.